Just think, Dustin Diamond could be buying his Cheerios here.
If you have no idea who I'm talking about, maybe this will spark your memory. That's right, folks. We tracked down Dustin Diamond, better known as the lovable Screech on Saved by the Bell, here in, of all places, Wisconsin. Today I'm going to fill you in on a little bit of what Dustin's been up to since he moved here. But before we get things rolling, this is Sightseeing Sally with her sidekick Mabel, and we're road tripping again across Wisconsin. Hey sightseers, today's road trip adventure requires a drive down south along Interstate 43 to a little city nestled along the shores of Lake Michigan known as Port Washington. Now, Port Washington's one of those cool little cities on the lake whose history is heavily embedded in the fishing industry, and while there's some really unique and fun architectural and historical buildings to see, that's not why we're here today. As I alluded before, we are here because of Dustin Diamond. Dustin happens to live here in Port Washington. Back in 2002, he left California and moved here. And guess what? We're standing in front of his house right now.
Oh my God, I can't believe I just walked past Dustin Diamond's house. Can you believe that? He's here in Wisconsin, of all places.
And how did he end up out in Wisconsin? After Saved by the Bell, Dustin, in his early 20s, was playing bass and recording an album. One of his buddies from Wisconsin came out to visit, and Dustin was actually looking for a change of scenery. His buddy was probably like, hey dude, why don't you come out to Wisconsin, check that out if you're sick of California. Of course, as the story goes, Dustin did, and apparently fell in love with the place.
I can't help but feel just a little bit like one of those crazed fans who lurks outside their favorite celebrity's home, trying to see if they'll run into him. But it just totally blows my mind that Dustin Diamond, Screech, from Saved by the Bell, lives here in Port Washington. It's crazy.
It's really no crazier than what some of his fans did when he first moved into the neighborhood. Apparently they used to like to play Ding Dong Ditch and yell Screech at all hours of the night.
I could be walking up and down the streets here and run into him. Or go to the grocery store and in the produce section, brush up against him. Excuse me, didn't see you standing there by the melons. Do other people here in town think that way, or am I just the only one?
For the most part, since Screech has grown up, and most of his fans have too, things have settled down, and life in Port Washington is relatively quiet. Most of the time, Dustin can be found traveling as he now does adult stand-up comedy, and 47 out of the 52 weeks of the year, he's on the road.
Port Washington is really a quaint, picturesque town here on the shores of Lake Michigan. I can totally see why Dustin Diamond left California behind and set up his residence here, especially with Milwaukee being so close. If he needed to fly in and out of Milwaukee, it's just, a half hour, 45-minute drive, possibly down to the airport. So, real close. Makes perfect sense to me. Let's just be nosy and see how much real estate costs here in Port Washington. Well, this place isn't in Port Washington, but look, Drury Lane. That's where the Muffin Man lives. Okay, that's a piece of property out in the town of Belgium. Another piece of property in Belgium. Look at that. Oh, there. If you want to move to the city of Port Washington and live where Dustin Diamond lives, expect to spend close to $500,000. The taxes on that.
In this quaint little city found on the shores of Lake Michigan, where most people have to spend $500,000 just to buy a house, and with Dustin being gone 47 weeks out of the year, you'd think his life would be relatively drama-free. Except, there was the time when a skeezy adult tape was released in 2006 where people claimed it was him, and there was the Celebrity Fit Club reality TV show where he played a villain, and then he had his controversial tell-all book about Saved by the Bell. But the biggest thing that's happened to him since he's moved to Wisconsin was getting arrested on Christmas Day in 2014 at a local bar. Now, if you're from Wisconsin, you know it's not unusual for fights to break out at the local drinking establishment. However, in this instance, Dustin got in trouble for reportedly stabbing somebody after he leapt to the defense of his lady.
So we're walking up upon the bar where Dustin Diamond got into that fight, the infamous fight where he allegedly stabbed somebody. And it's here. Looks like they got a bit of an outdoor seating.
Allegedly, the fight broke out after a group of intoxicated people, 2 men and a woman, started an argument with Diamond's girlfriend, Amanda Schultz, over the taking of video and photos of the two. Diamond allegedly stabbed one of the men after his girlfriend got punched in the face. Ironically, the man who had gotten stabbed didn't even realize he had gotten stabbed until later.
So obviously they're closed, otherwise I would go in and see what the inside looks like. But yeah, this is the saloon where Dustin Diamond got into a bar fight and ended up having to spend some jail time as a result.
Well, like I said, bar fights are pretty common here in Wisconsin. You just don't expect to have one with Screech. I hope nobody tries using this phone to call for a cab after bar close. As a result of this little Christmas Day tussle, Dustin was charged with second-degree felony, recklessly endangering public safety, and 2 misdemeanors, carrying a concealed weapon and disorderly conduct. Unlike most Wisconsin bar fights, however, this one made national news, hitting headlines on CNN and USA Today.
Because the fight took place here in the city of Port Washington, the local police would have been the ones to respond to the initial complaint. However, Dustin would have served out his sentence over at the Ozaukee County Jail.
As it turned out, the jury found him not guilty of the second-degree felony charge, but guilty on the 2 misdemeanor charges. The judge who sentenced him said he has to send a message to the community that we're just not going to live like this. No offense, but is that really going to stop the next drunken brawl from breaking out? I think not.
So this would have been where Dustin would have served out his sentence. He was sentenced to 120 days in jail plus $1,000 for restitution, I believe.
Dustin served out his sentence in early 2016 and actually got out a month early due to good behavior.
And you all thought nothing interesting ever happens in Wisconsin. Boy, were you wrong. This is probably where Screech goes when he has a craving for Butterburgers.